Okay, if you were given $15,000 to build a computer lab, what would you do? Most people would go to Best Buy or Staples or some computer store and ask them for help, because that's probably the best way to do it. But what if I told you there was a way you could save a lot of money and build it yourself? If you had any need for evidence that I am a massive geek, I submit to you the workshop I set up in my parents' basement. This is an outdated photo, but there are now 25 computers in that basement, and my mom wants all of them gone, so if anyone wants a laptop, no. I've also spent a few months working in IT. 90% of that was goofing off on the company time, but I think that still counts as credibility, so I'm gonna roll with it. But in reality, I do have a very serious credibility statement as well. This is a computer lab of 15 high-end editing PCs, and I built almost all of them myself. My friends and I went to the school board, and we said, we noticed you need to build an editing lab for all of the students teaching multimedia classes. So we submitted a bid, and they approved it, and we built them. So why should you build your next computer? Well, that's a good question. You're not a school district trying to save money, but Brendan Neistat, who writes for the tech publication Wired, has stated that there are 5 core reasons why you should build your next computer yourself. The first is the cost. As I stated before, companies like HP and Dell who build your computer for you are going to charge you a lot of money for that. And you want to save money. The next reason is experience. By building your computer yourself, you learn what goes into it, as well as how that stuff works. You might not know everything you're doing, but having a general understanding is better than nothing. The next is upgradability. We've all known that after a few years, we all have to update our laptops or buy new Chromebooks or whatever it is that we're using. The nice thing about building your own desktop is that because you built it, you know how to take it apart and put faster stuff inside of it. The next part is special parts. Now, a lot of you might be using a computer for something very specific, and it took you a while to find a computer that had that. For example, photographers might need a computer with an SD card reader or a CF card reader built in, or video editors might need very specific color grading software. There's all kinds of things. Heck, my computer has the most useless but cool of special parts. It has a little drawer in the front of it that I use to store all of my flash drives. The last reason is simplified repair. Because computer parts are all pretty much the same in terms of they have a set formula that they use to build them all. So no matter where you take your computer, they'll be able to fix it. But if you buy like a Dell or an HP, that's the only company that'll be able to fix your computer. So now that you know why you should build your computer, what do you need to build a computer? This is a CPU. Linus Sebastian, CEO of Linus Media Group, says that the CPU is the most important part of the computer, and he's not wrong. It's the part that does all of your computer's thinking. Basically, anything your computer has to process or look at or do or calculate, all of it goes into your CPU. Now, the CPU then connects to the motherboard. The motherboard is basically the backbone of your computer. Everything inside of your computer connects to it in one way or another. These are 2 different types of storage. Memory, also known as RAM, is the place where your computer holds files that it is actively working on or editing. So if you have a photo open in Photoshop and you are editing that photo, the photo's data is stored in memory, or RAM. When you're done and you save it, it goes back to your hard drive or your storage. This is the same place all of your music and your videos and pictures are all stored. Then there's the GPU. If you're planning on doing animating or 3D rendering or any kinds of graphically intense work, you'll want a nice one. But if you're not planning on doing any of that, it's actually better to not have one at all than it is to buy a cheap one because of the rule of diminishing returns. Basically, the cheaper it is, the less likely it is to work well, so you may as well stick with what's built in. This is a PSU, it's short for power supply unit, and it is what powers every part inside of your computer. Everything inside your computer has to connect to it in some way or another. Then there's cases. These come in all shapes and sizes, and I guarantee you'll be able to find one that you like if you look hard enough. That's because there are about, I would say probably about 10,000 different styles and cases available from tons of manufacturers. Now obviously you don't want to buy like the cheap $3 one from like Walmart or something because it'll probably break or cut you. But as it turns out, they're all pretty reliable, and as long as you have one that fits what you need it to fit, you'll probably be fine. The last part that's important is peripherals. That's a fancy way of saying anything that stays plugged into your computer. which is usually your monitor and your keyboard and your mouse. But maybe you also have a card reader or something else that's unique to your situation. So now that you know what's in a PC, how do you put it together? Well, first step is planning, because before you can actually buy anything, you need to know what you're putting in that bin. The best way to do this is start by figuring out what you're going to be using your computer for. If you're just browsing Facebook, which you shouldn't be, they sell your data. If you're just browsing Facebook or watching YouTube videos, you don't need a powerful computer at all. In fact, it's probably better to run to Walmart and buy the cheapest laptop. But if you're doing anything more intense than that, you should try to find a CPU that matches the amount of power you'll need. We'll get into how you do that on the next slide, or the one after, I forget. The next thing you need to do is decide if your computer is going to be doing anything important enough to use a GPU. That would be, like I said earlier, if you're doing anything intense with photo or video rendering, stuff like that requires a solid GPU. If you're just browsing the web, you don't need one. People will lie to you, but it's true. Then you put all those parts that you picked out into a website called PC Part Picker, and that'll tell you what the other stuff you need to get the rest of your computer running is. They'll suggest your memory and your storage and your hard drive and things like that. So, what order do you put it in? Roughly that order. But depending on what parts you've bought and what companies you've bought them from, there are a lot of things in that order that can change. So my general recommendation is if you actually plan to attempt this, look up a YouTube video by a YouTuber called Bitwit. He has a video called How to Build a Computer Step by Step, and that'll walk you through each step in the process. So, how do you know what parts are good enough for what you need them to do? Well, basically, you go to one of these places. PC Part Picker will help recommend previous builds that other people have put together. Then there is MinusTechTips.com, which is a forum full of all kinds of nerdy people like myself who have all built computers before and are eager to help you do the same. There's also a subreddit called r/buildapc, and they'll be happy to help you as well. Then you could go to a store like Micro Center and Best Buy. Now you should know that most of those places do work off of commissions, so going into it knowing that they're probably going to try to upsell you, but oh well. So, that's currently my dorm. Ignore the fact that that photo was taken 3 or 4 hours ago. I definitely prepared this in advance. Now that you've done all of that, you know what you want to put in your computer, you know how to put it together, and you know what resources to go to for help, you should have a working computer. In conclusion, clap too early. In conclusion, you now know what needs to go in a computer, why you should build it yourself, and the third topic. All right, thank you. These are my